Hello and welcome to another episode of Coffee Fusion. This week we're going to look at dialing in a new coffee. Hey guys, so I've done a few extraction tutorials in the past and they're very good guides to get you started on how to get a good extraction. So if you haven't checked those out yet, I'd encourage you to look at those first. I'll put some annotations for you to check those out. But someone asked recently how I go about dialing in a new coffee and sort of playing around with the ratios to get the best out of that coffee. And oh look, I just happen to have a new coffee here. So this here, guys, is my new single origin, which I'll release next week. It's a Sumatran coffee, but it's a really interesting and different version of Sumatran coffee. I've never really tasted a Sumatran that's good before. It's from Aceh, so northern Sumatra, and it's a honey process, so it's really nice and sweet. So I'll put that back here, but basically whenever I get a new coffee in, first of all, I'll do a cupping to kind of taste what is potentially available from the coffee. And then I'll think about those flavor notes and think about how I might go about extracting those through the espresso machine. For example, if I have something like a Brazil, which might be nutty and chocolatey, I might want to have a slightly shorter extraction, which will be kind of stronger in strength and more syrupy in body, and that might get me a better kind of nutty, chocolatey taste. Whereas I have something like an African, perhaps say an Ethiopian or a Kenyan, I might want to elongate the extraction a little bit to bring out and kind of showcase that acidity and sweetness. So before you even get to the espresso machine, you might have a bit of an idea of what you're chasing in the extraction when it comes time to dialing in and tasting those first shots. From here, it's just a matter of extracting the coffee. So first of all, I would just extract the first few shots just to get in the ballpark of a nice sort of flow rate and that sort of thing. For example, my go-to ratio is usually 1 to 2 if I'm talking grams in versus beverage weight out. And I like to get that in 28 to 30 seconds. So I'm going to dial in the coffee so that that is what's happening and taste the espresso as a result. Now when I tasted this coffee extracted with that ratio, it was like sweet and that kind of thing, but I thought being a Sumatran I could pull some more body out of it whilst maintaining that sweetness that I am getting in the cup. So because of that, I decided to fine up the grind just a little bit, and that would just slow that flow rate down. So if I'm extracting for the same amount of time, the grams out will be a little bit less, and so I'll get a closer or a smaller ratio, and I'll get more of that syrupy kind of flavor that I was chasing. And so that's what's happened. Obviously in this video I've just shown 2 extractions, but of course there's going to be a lot of dialing in and that kind of thing in between finding those ratios that you're really after. I suggest that you take a sip of all of those coffees. Even if, for example, you know that it's going to be under extracted, I would taste it and get a reference point so you know how you're going to adjust your grind to get that extraction balanced in terms of extraction and also tasting and feeling the way you want it to feel. I think the more that you extract a coffee and taste it and get to play with it and work with it on the bar, the more you understand it. And so then you'll know exactly those parameters that you want to work with. But I think day after day, even if you have an idea of where you want to extract your coffee and the ratio, you should keep tasting it to get that understanding and making sure it's tasting the way that you expect it to be tasting. So there you go, guys. Thank you for that question. If you like this video and you learned something from it, make sure you click that like button because that really helps me. And if this is your first Coffee Fusion video, make sure you click subscribe if you like the sound of it, because what I do is a lot of different coffee related vids, 2 each week, and we can learn about coffee together. If you're within Australia and you want to check this out yourself, next week I'll be releasing the Sumatran, so stay tuned for that. You can grab a bag and do this experiment yourself and learn a little bit more about extraction. And you can certainly do the same thing for my other coffees as well. For example, my seasonal blend Clickbait. If you're extracting coffee through milk, I recommend kind of having a tighter extraction, or if you're extracting a black, maybe for espresso or a long black, you can do like 1 to 2 and you get this really nice sweetness coming through. I'm all about you guys learning more about coffee and me learning more about coffee together as we go through this journey. So if you have any questions about coffee that you want to know the answers to, write them as a comment below and I'll get on top of it for you. Thanks so much again, guys, and I'll see you next week. Remember, if you want to play along for Free Pour Friday, it's at the Coffee Fusion on Instagram. See you guys. And oh look, I just happen to have a new coffee here. Yeah, just kidding, that's been there.